Who said that? Did you say that, you boob?
We're off to a good start.
I'm going to leave my hat on because it's air conditioned in here, and all the heat will go out through the chimney, you understand?
It is a cold room.
It is a cold room, but a warm audience.
How we doing?
Check 1, 2.
Pretty good.
We'll go lower this a little bit.
Great. Yep. Right. Great job.
I'm just going
There we go.
Check 1, 2.
Just lower this a bit. Oh, that's good.
Right there.
Yes.
You're going to want to hold the mic up to your mouth.
You got it.
There you go.
Thank you. There you go. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, yes, all right.
So Alan, you've been the voice of so many iconic characters over the years, and I think Skeletor's got to be right at the top of that list
Numero
for
uno,
sure. For
absolutely.
sure, right? Because it's a character that's not only kind of transcended Masters of the Universe, but just pop culture in general. It's great.
Biggest surprise to me, you know. Do the job, you go home, you forget about it, and then look what we have here. Yep.
Before we really start talking about that character, I'd love to know, really, at what point did you know that acting is what you wanted to do? with
When I
your
was
life?
about 10 years old, literally, about 10. Because I grew up with radio, there was no television. And I used to run home to listen to shows that you run home to watch on television. And I loved to imitate movie stars like Bogart and all those people. I had a natural ear for it. As a matter of fact, when I was in college, I was doing a show for KDKA Pittsburgh called Adventures in Research. I was the guest each week, a different scientist. And I remember I was cast as a South African scientist. I had no idea what a South African accent sounded like, but in my imagination, I put together British and Dutch, the Dutch Boers, you know. And years later, I heard the representative from South Africa at the UN, and he was copying me. Can you believe that? So I nailed it in my imagination, and that's really what it is. I mean, if I'm shown a cell of Skeletor, and I look at it and I see the bony head, and that's why it went up into here and became nasal. It's very, very often I don't think about it too much. It just kind of happens, and I either say that's terrible, oh, that's good, you know, and we go on from there.
It's great.
That's how that happened.
And in addition to voice work, I mean, you've been on so many television shows over the years too. You've played such a wide range of characters. Do you think having that breadth of experience and live action makes the voice acting easier, or?
Oh, it does, yeah, sure. I mean, I spent years in theater, in the repertory theater in D.C., and in the summers I did musical stock. And so I have a huge theater background. And so I'm an actor who happens to do voiceovers, you know, and if I go to a movie, like I'm Vanity Smurf. So I went to see the movie The Smurfs, and I could only take about 10 minutes of that. It's just terrible. Because they cast name actors who have no idea how to act only with their voice. A lot of the movie stars, I love it. It's the big pause. They're supposed to be thinking, but I don't think they are. And it's the big pause. When you can't pause when you're doing radio or when you're doing voiceovers, come on, move it along. As a matter of fact, when I was doing the Smurfs, Gordon Hunt, that was the direction he kept giving me, faster, faster, faster. Because I tended to do Jack Benny and take forever for it, you know. Faster, faster, faster. So, you know, it's just acting, that's all it is, but you do it from here to here. And sometimes you use your body in order to emphasize what you're doing. Oh, I'm sorry. This says, did you just fall? It doesn't. If you make a sudden move, are you all right? If you don't answer, they call 911. I'm okay. All right. Goddamn Apple Watch.
So Alan, when did you really break into voice acting? Were you doing it in tandem with live action stuff all along, or was there a big turning point where?
Yes, jealousy. I came out to California. I was on a tour with 3 plays in repertory, and we closed in Hollywood. And I stayed on because I got an agent immediately, and I began doing Hogan's Heroes and I Spy and a lot of stuff. And I was working every week on camera in movies and television. And I had a commercial agent. I was doing voiceovers for commercial announcers and all that. And I think I caught wind of another actor who was doing these things called cartoons. And so I said to my agent, gee, I sure would like to do that. He said, okay, well, I'll submit you. And then he sent me up to Hanna-Barbera, and I met Joe Barbera for this cartoon. And we talked a little. He said, well, this is a part of a talking dog. Can you do that? And I said, I can look good. You start tomorrow. So on the way home, my wife said to me, is this what you do for a living? I said, yeah. And that started. I did a lot of stuff for Joe Barbera. I did the Smurfs. I did Scooby-Dum on Scooby-Doo. I did a lot of stuff for him. And then I was sent up to audition for Filmation for this new show called He-Man Masters of the Universe. And I auditioned for Skeletor, and they phoned the next day or day 2 later, said, okay, he's got it. So when I went in to record, he said, oh, can you also do this character called Merman? I said, well, what is he? Oh, well, he's in water. I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. Oh, yeah, just look at the water. And, oh, there's a character called Cringer. I said, oh, yeah, I can do Cringer. Yeah, I do that, too. And Man-at-Arms, I just used my own voice. So I did 4 voices, and then there'd be a guest on there, something like, can you do Beast Man or something like that, you know. And so I created a voice like that. And most of them, my first guess, they accepted, and it was taken and used and brought back sometimes. Yep.
And so Alan, when you go in to read for a character like Skeletor,
Yeah.
how much are you given to draw from? I mean, they give you like a visual representation of that, and
Let me have
yeah.
it. Yeah. See, that's what they show me. They show me this. It's on a cell. You know what a cell is? Okay, CEL. And that's all I saw. But I saw the bony head. And that's why I went nasal on it. The voice came later. I mean, the laugh came later. I have no idea why I did that. But I tend to look for comedy when there's drama, and drama when there's comedy. See? So I guess I'm a contrarian. Anyway, I put in, and that caught on like crazy. I'll tell you a little anecdote. My wife and I were taking a trip to South America, and we were in Santiago, Chile, and we had a car and driver and so forth, and a guide. And she said, well, my wife speaks Spanish too, because she was raised in Santiago. So the guide said, what's your profession? I said, oh, I'm an actor. The driver says, in Spanish, you know, what does he do? She says, he's an actor. He says, well, what movies have I seen him in? So she asked me, and I reel off a bunch of movies I'm in, and she translates it into Spanish, and obviously there was no connection in his mind. So I said to him, did you ever watch cartoons? And he went, so I went, whoa, into the curve. Believe it or not, the same damn thing happened a week later in Buenos Aires. Different driver, same question, whoa, different curve. It's an iconic character, an iconic laugh, known all over the world, just by accident, I guess.
When was the first moment that you realized just kind of how iconic and big Skeletor was?
When I began doing these conventions, I have no idea. You do the job, you get paid to go home, I'll see you next week. And 30 years later, all of these Comic-Cons come about, and I go to one, and the first thing you know, I'm going to, what did I do? 12 or 13 last year? That's right.
We're turning them down at this point, actually.
Now, I know, I've got this one, and then I've got Anaheim in July, and New York, the end of June, New Jersey, and Tampa, and Indianapolis, and something maybe in Seattle. We have to talk about that. So it just grows and grows, and sometimes I have to turn them down because I can't travel and come home for 5 days and go off again. It takes me 2 days to recover from a trip. See, I'm an old person. I have to nap.
And when you're voicing a character like Skeletor, who obviously is the villain in Masters of the Universe, but you're able to insert so much fun into him as well. Like, what's the thought process behind creating the right balance for kids, where you've got a villain that's credible but is still not too scary?
I try not to be too scary. I try not to be too evil. I try not to be too dramatic. I just think that's corny as hell. So I look for something, and I can usually find it. I did, it's on video of Henry IV, I think, and I was the king being led to the tower. I hadn't seen it in 40 years, and I got a hold of a VHS and looked at it. I'm being led to my death, and I am so charming and good-natured. I said, where in the hell did you come up with that idea? Because it's brilliant. It isn't, oh my God, I'm going to be dead. No, it's like, oh, hi, fellas. Yeah, we're going to take a little walk. Isn't that nice? I don't know where it comes from, but I try not to take life too seriously. If I did, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, I'll tell you that.
And at the same time you were doing Masters of the Universe, kind of towards the end of the show, they also did a live-action Masters of the Universe movie.
Do we have to talk about that? Sorry. You see, you made me spill
Yeah.
a little. No, I don't think that was very good. Next question.
There's that. Well, let's open it up to our crowd.
Hmm?
Who's got questions for Alan? Right here.
You did some voices for Never Ending Story, Falcor, but did you also do Morla the Agent one?
The which one?
The giant turtle, Morla the Agent one?
No.
No, but interesting, Falcor. Wolfgang Peterson came to LA and I read for the part. Again, he showed me the picture of the luck dragon and told me what his function was in the movie. And immediately I went into the voice that I used for the luck dragon. He said, that's fine. We'll have you in Munich and we could do it. Now, they'd already filmed it, you understand. And they had somebody doing the scratch track. So if there were lines like, can you reach behind my ear and scratch it, oh, that feels so good. They had the puppet's voice doing this. All I had to do was loop, ADR, if you all know what that is putting the voice to it. So all I had to do was do this and say, for instance, when Atreyu comes, I said, leaving so soon? Well, all I saw was, so I did it, I did the whole thing. And Wolfgang said, oh, that's fine, very good, thank you. I said, can I have a playback? He said, yes. I said, that's not right, I want to do it again. All right, we come back tomorrow, we do it again. Well, that's the version that you see. The difference is the first one was technically correct without heart. And the second day, that's the Falcor that you see. Yeah. The first time I probably said, leaving so soon? No. Leaving so soon? So that's the difference. And that's why you need an actor, not just some movie star who says the words.
It's great.
Now, I want to just continue with
Yeah.
this. So I'm finished, he said, thank you. And I start to walk, he says, oh, there's another voice if you would look at it. It's called the Rockbiter. So I saw this Rockbiter, I said, oh, I can do that. So that's why it came out. Oh, this is so good. Oh, look at these I did the Rockbiter. Thank you. Oh, Liz, can you do Gamork? So I looked at Gamork. I said, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, could you do the narrator at the end? I'm almost at the airport, you know. So I did the narrator, the summation of the whole movie at the end.
Wow.
So we got 4 for the price of 1, which was not a lot of money either. But no, this is my vengeance. It's a great movie, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is. And then you did a follow-up years later with Noah Hathaway.
I only did the original movie.
But you did a commercial, I thought, using,
Oh, yes, it was a Spotify, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, yes. That was clever, I thought. It was very clever, the way they did that. Yeah, he was now an older man sitting on Falcor's back, and I know I did the laugh there, yeah, we timed it. That's a very good commercial. Time to bring it back, isn't it? Yeah.
Right over here.
Yeah, my question is, did you like doing the episodes where Skeletor has to deal with Hordak? You know, what's happening with team up?
Skeletor has to do what?
The episodes where Skeletor and Hordak cross over.
Was Hordak George DiCenzo? I love that man. He put me into Helter Skelter. We were friends, and they didn't have anybody to play Aaron Stovitz. They were ready to shoot, and George recommended me for that, and that's how I wound up in Helter Skelter with DiCenzo, and so I put him into this one. Payback. No, I love working with George. Unfortunately, he is not with us anymore.
And Alan, when you guys were recording for Masters of the Universe, was it similar to how you recorded Transformers, where you were all in the room together, like doing the voices, or was
No,
it more
because there were only
individualized?
3 of us or 2 of us. John Irwin and I, John played He-Man. He doesn't come to conventions. He's very shy about that. I said to him, why not? He said, well, I don't, I have to do his voice. Well, I don't look like He-Man. I said, no shit, I don't look like Skeletor. I said, they don't expect you to look like He-Man. No. Does Chris Reeves look like Superman? No. Well, I don't do that. He's just shy about it. I wish he'd come. The line would be around the block all the way to San Bernardino. No, there'd just be the 2 of us, or if Linda Gary was in it, or Melendi, then the 3 of us would be working together. But sometimes, for whatever reason, I remember there was a period where I was working 2 days in London and come back and do 2 days in LA on the Smurfs and on this. So sometimes I'd have to go in and record by myself. They'd play me the feed line so I'd know how to answer in turn, you know? But most of the time we were together.
do you have a preference between solo recording or ensemble recording?
Oh, always work with the other person if you can. Yeah, that's acting.
And what was your recording schedule like for Masters of the Universe? Because you guys were doing like 65 episodes a year.
Yeah, we
right?
did like 130 episodes, 1 or 2 a week, yeah.
Wow.
We do a cold read of it and then record it, and most of the time we never had to do pickups. I mean, we were pretty much right on, you know. And then, of course, it goes to the animators and they draw. Based on the energy that we put into the line and the formation of the words, you know. They're very good. Tom Cook was one of our animators, and some of you may even have artwork that Tom has done. He did a lot of different cartoons.
That's great. Right here?
Oh, hi. Pretty much like Lou Schimmer, as well as the voice actor of He-Man and the rest of the ensemble for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
I don't quite understand the beginning of that question.
What I was trying to say, when you worked on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, you basically, I felt like you put a lot of energy and you had a lot of fun with the other actors. What was it like working with the voice actor for He-Man and like the other voice actor?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's why we acted off of each other. We had a good time. And sometimes we broke up and laughed, and we had to do it again. But, oh yeah, well, I did Mama's Family with Betty White. We barely got through it. We laughed so much at each other. It's a great thing. I did 3 or 4 Get Smarts, and there was a very interesting thing that happened in one episode where I was an Israeli agent 498. When he arrived, he had to call his mother to let him know he arrived safely. So there was a line in it where the second act was 3 or 4 of us dressed up like Arabs and saying, will the real Abba Ben Booby stand up, you know? Well, I ran with that in rehearsal, and I laughed, and I said, there was a game show, will the real, what's your name? What's your name?
Me?
Yeah,
Yes, Jonathan.
Don.
Oh,
Yeah?
Jonathan.
Yeah, will the real Don stand up, please, you know? It was a guest show, a panel show. So I ran with that line, and Don Adams said, hold it, just a minute. And they went upstairs and rewrote the entire second act for a payoff to, my name is Abba Ben Booby. My name is Abba Ben Booby. My name is Abba Ben Booby. Rewrote they don't do that anymore. They're in a hurry to get it done. Time is money. They had their way, they would have had it yesterday, you know? That's the way that happened.
Thank you.
Here?
I get a lot of enjoyment watching all the collections of the Skeletor Insults.
I have trouble hearing you. Can you speak up a little?
Okay. Now, on YouTube, there's a big collection of all of the Skeletor Insults.
Do I have a collection?
No, there's a YouTube clip of all the, like, the big famous Skeletor insults, like, edited together into like a supercut that's pretty amazing.
It's a lot of fun. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And I was wondering if, when you guys are in the room together, if you guys ever came up with your own that actually made it onto.
Well, I'm trying to find them because I put them on here, just in case somebody like you would ask. Well, without wasting your time by trying to find it, I remember a couple of them, yes. You royal boob, or I could write a book about what you don't know. That's one of my favorites. And if you can remember any of them, give them to me and I'll read them for you. Huh?
I was wondering if you guys came up with your own.
And Alan, did you
Yes,
ever
yes.
ad-lib
Lou
those?
Scheimer said to me one time, why don't you ad-lib a few insults and see? Well, 95% of them were on the cutting room floor. They were so filthy. He couldn't use them. So maybe 3 or 4 made it. But we sure had a good time laughing about it. But don't ever give me that kind of freedom, you know? I'll kill your show in an instant.
That's great. Who else? Right here.
This could be a silly question, but
Louder, please.
this could be a silly question, but have you played video game before?
I did video games when they first came out many years ago. I don't know, maybe half a dozen or something like that. But then I decided I didn't want to do it anymore because it strained my voice. You know, all that stuff. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I said to my agent, I won't do it unless they're ready to pay me, blah, 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 blah. She said, never get it. I said, good. And I haven't done it since.
That's great. Who else? Anybody else?
I love that you have a Shakespeare background, because I love Shakespeare as well. Anyway, how do I put this? So, to me, and in my studies and stuff, it's kind of like Shakespeare, his storytelling, the way he told stories as kind of, you can't point at a character and not be able to take it back to Shakespeare. Do you feel the same way, or the storylines, or anything? I mean, I'm just curious.
That would relate to something Shakespeare wrote?
Yeah.
I think everything that's written today, you'll find some connection to Shakespeare. He universal of the human condition, greed, love, I don't care what it is. Romeo and Juliet, Merchant of Venice, Richard III. It's what you're seeing now. Absolutely. The names of the characters have been changed to protect the innocent. Well, there is no innocent.
Well, and Alan, just kind of talking about those sort of universal qualities with characters, when you're looking at Skeletor, what's that point of relatability that you find for him?
I think of Juliet immediately. No, I have no idea. I don't relate at the time to anything else I've ever seen. I try not. I try to get it right from what I'm seeing there, not from, except when I copy myself, you know. Like I stole Skeletor to do Ming the Merciless. Yeah, but if you plagiarize yourself, what am I going to do, sue myself? You know? But most of the time I try to figure something or take it and bend it a little. I did Sheriff Scuzz in one. He had a cigar in his mouth, you know, so I talk like that all the time. As a matter of fact, Warpath, I lifted from George C. Scott, because I'd worked with him in the Hindenburg, and boy, did I love that man. So that's all I did for Warpath was just do George C. Scott, wham, bam!
Awesome.
Yes,
Great.
sir.
Of everything you performed, what would you consider your finest performance in animation and in live action? A role that says, this is
I leave
me.
that to you, sir. I leave that to you to make that choice and decision. I'll tell you some that I thought were terrible, then I looked at them years later, and I said, gee, that's pretty good. I was flying back east, my wife and I are on a plane, and they're showing the movie with Richard Pryor called Moving. And I said to her, boy, did I overact in this thing. God, I'm terrible. Well, we're at 30,000 feet. I can't walk out. Well, I watched it, and time heals all wounds. I thought I was pretty funny in it when I saw it at 30,000 feet. But if I'd seen it the week after, I would have said, this is embarrassingly overdone. But it really wasn't.
I've met a lot of voiceover actors and actors in general, and kind of feel like that feeling right there, where it's like, do your best, leave your heart on the floor, but you leave, if you leave and you're not questioning, and you're like, oh yeah, I did a fucking hell of a job. Sorry.
Go ahead.
You know, hell of a job, that you're no longer, that you kind of lost that creativity, and like, just like someone like Steve, when he's always, oh, I wish I could go back and do, Cowboy Bebop, he's like, 'cause I feel like I can do it so much better now that I'm better.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, but there are actors who I feel like just kind of hit the ceiling, so to speak, and they're like, oh no, everything I do is perfect. And they
Oh,
never
I don't
question.
know, nor do I care to know those people. No, anybody who thinks, oh, I'm perfect in what I've done. No, that's what Vanity Smurf would say. Oh, I'm so beautiful, oh my. No, I think any creative person has doubts afterwards. Architects, thank God surgeons can't have a second shot at it. But I think if you're a creative person, you look at it, well, that's the beauty, I suppose, of oil painting. You can go over it again before it winds up in somebody else's hands. But writing, oh boy, the more you read it, if you let time go, you say, oh, no, I got to edit that, I got to change that, yes. And I've done lots of acting, and I thought, this is terrible, but we're moving on, you know? And then I get to look at it a little later, and I say, oh, it's pretty good, it's pretty good. But I never thought, oh, I couldn't do any better. Oh, that's wonderful. No. You're kidding yourself if you do that. No.
What advice would you give to actors currently in the business? For instance, June Foray always recommended going to the audition, or rather the recording session an hour beforehand. So do you have any advice for actors along those lines?
What did you say about the recording session beforehand?
She was always at a session an hour beforehand. That was her advice. I was wondering what your advice would be to
Who
actors.
said this?
June Foray.
She said,
She
a
said
recording session before the recording session?
She said
To show up like an hour early.
hour
Oh, hour early.
For a session.
yes,
Well, that's her own
right.
sense of getting into it. Barbara Stanwyck always, would appear, even if she wasn't shooting that day, to get the flow of what was going on. I think it's, I always arrived at the theater at least 2 hours ahead of time before even the overture started. It's a matter of settling into the locale. Leave whatever you had on the street outside. June Foray was brilliant, you know.
But what advice would you give? That was her
You have
advice.
to
What's
find
your
your own.
advice?
You have to find your own. Have to find your own. Some people aren't quite fine just showing up 2 minutes before or 2 minutes after. I'd rather be there ahead of time, get the feel of the place, the smell of the place, talk to another actor who's showing up early too. Not kidding around, just kind of, you know. That's right for me, it's right for June. Some people just show up and do it.
And Alan, what's your process like? What's your process like preparing for a recording session? Like once you got the script and the material, you know you're going to go in. What steps do you go through to get ready?
Well, rarely, especially on a series, you never get the script ahead of time. You come into the studio and they hand you the script, everybody, and go through it like this. Oh, there's a laugh. Oh, there's a laugh. We don't really know until we start reading it, and sometimes we stop and say, oh, let me go back on that. Let me go back on. This is rehearsal. We don't get the script ahead of time for a show. If it's a movie or a television live show, you get it, you work on it at home. And you learn it before you get to the studio, because they don't have time for rehearsal while you're learning it. So I remember one of the first things I did was I Spy. And I played a Russian in it. I had like 2 pages of solid dialogue. And I did it in one take. So the crew all applauded. I thought, boy, they really know good acting. No, they were glad they were going to get out of there early.
That's great. Right here?
Hi. So, yeah, my name is Jonathan Johnson, and I'm very thankful I got to meet you today, Alan, because my teacher, Colleen Hines, actually, who works at Crafton Hills, which I also go to school at, got me into the He-Man series, and that's why I, pretty much bought stuff for you to sign later on today, because I really love the show. I started getting into it. I also remember the 2002 show, which, if I remember correctly, I think you did a video where you worked with the 2002's Michael Donovan for a convention center where, I'm trying to remember, it was on YouTube, and did you ever meet, like, the voice actor for, like, the 2002 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe?
Did I?
Just
Not that I can recall.
Was that the one that was recorded in Canada?
Yes.
No, I didn't meet them. I don't even know who did it.
It was Michael Donovan.
No, I don't know him at all.
And the other question was because I also loved the movie, the He-Man and She-Ra, I think it was the Swords movie. What was it like for you to do that film, the voice acting for Skeletor?
You mean Secret of the
the
Sword?
Secret of the
Yes,
Sword,
Secret of the
right?
Sword.
Yeah.
What was that?
The Secret of the Sword. It's the one you did with
Oh,
Millennium.
well, that was, as far as I was concerned, it was just like an episode of He-Man. It was no different. We didn't approach it any differently than we would have if it were a day's work in an episode. Secret of the Sword became what, like a movie, huh? Right?
Yes.
Yep.
We didn't treat it that way. We treated it just as if we were doing an episode of He-Man or She-Ra.
Thank you.
No special nerves or angst or anything. We just did it.
And I mean, Alan, at the time that you were doing the voice of Skeletor and so many other characters on Masters of the Universe, you were on a whole bunch of shows, like in that era. Was there anything at the time about Masters of the Universe that felt sort of special or different than some of the other jobs that you were doing, or was there just no way to know at that time?
No, it wasn't special. We'd already started on it, cemented it. That was the summer I was doing 2 days in London on a movie, and then coming back and picking up Smurfs and He-Man So I had all these miles on TWA, and then they went out of business, thank you, Kirk McCrorian. So I never got to use those miles. But we did fly on the 747, which was a great plane. Now the Dreamliner, what's that, the 787?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you all get a chance to fly on that. That is something else again. Boy.
And kind of that period in like the late 70s and in the 80s, I mean, really feels like a golden age of animation.
It was.
Like, what do you think it was about that period that
Oh,
triggered that?
well, I just think, we had great writers who grew up in back east, great writers, and great comedy writers who started writing for Jackie Gleason and Dean Martin. There was a guy. I loved working with Dean Martin. What a guy. They grew up like I did with radio, and some of them actually wrote for radio. I mean, look at who wrote for, was it Gleason? I mean, Mel Brooks, and, Larry Gelbart, and Carl Reiner wrote and performed. There was a certain freedom. It cost less to do. Those variety shows, which I miss terribly, they were just absolutely wonderful. Great talent. The talent learned what they were doing by playing theaters all over the country, vaudeville and all of that stuff, you know. It didn't just happen overnight. Watch a Burns and Allen, or Jack Benny, or Red Skelton. They spend years doing vaudeville, and that's where they learned how to come up with, you know, George Burns had no comedy act at all. And then he was working with this woman, Gracie Allen, and they were kidding around one day, and Gracie came out and was stupid. He said, I think we ought to try this as a husband and wife. And they did. They were a big smash overnight in vaudeville. And they went on to radio, television, and all that. Started with really very basic experience and growing from there. I don't think we have that today. There's no real theater, so to speak, to try out and fail and succeed. And everything is so expensive, needlessly so. You know what theater tickets are in New York now? You used to be able to buy an orchestra seat. I'm not even talking years ago. I'm talking just before Mel Brooks, the producers, which changed everything, by the way. You bought a theater ticket, an orchestra seat, well, let's say $80, $90, okay? All of a sudden, the producer's opens, he sees what a hit it is. Oh, we're going to pay $450 for those seats. Well, now, if you want to go to a hit Broadway show, and you sit in the orchestra, if you're in the orchestra on the side, it's $149. You get a seat in the middle, I saw it yesterday, $750 for that same seat a little further towards the center. Now it's no longer by the section, it's by the seat. Greed, 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 greed. That's the difference. Pitiful.
Right.
For say, what role did you audition for that you really wanted but didn't get?
Oh, boy. Well, I never got to audition for anything Spencer Tracy did, or Clint Eastwood, or Gene Hackman, but I did, I auditioned for, I auditioned, got the job, and was fired twice. Does that count? Okay. I was hired for the musical version of, there's a wagon coming in, and what's that name of that movie? It was a Broadway musical. No. Anyway, at the end of rehearsal, I made an offhand comment to the director, and I was immediately fired. I didn't care, the picture was a bomb. And then there was another movie I was hired for, which was about ballet, and I had a nice part. Handshake deal, by the way. Handshake, before the lawyers messed it up. Handshake deal. And I walked out, and a friend of mine came in, And he snowed the director with how his daughter was a ballerina or something. And all of a sudden, I was out, and he was in. That handshake was a deal. Ross paid off whatever it was, $25,000, no question asked. That was a deal before the lawyers got into it. Nowadays, if it's not in writing, forget it, Buster. Yeah.
Sometimes even if it is in writing.
That's right. Take us to court. Yeah.
Right.
What can animation directors do to get the best performance from an actor in sessions?
Two things, work with them or fire them. No, animation director he has a vision also, and a vision of the whole. And if you're not coming up with something that's close to what the intention is, he will make a suggestion, short of giving you a line reading, which only takes care of that one line and not a good idea. We were talking yesterday about Orson Welles, and he was doing something, and the director said, Mr. Welles, if you don't mind, could you read the line this way? He said, are you giving me a line reading? Oh, no, sir, no. Good. Let's move on. But sometimes the actor is not interpreting what the intention is, and he will try and say, without giving a line reading, well, the idea is, oh, I see, okay, let's do it again. Yeah. Line reading sometimes only takes care of that one specific thing, and sometimes the actor resents being told how to read the line, because it doesn't help with the rest of the performance.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, and this is something interesting I found out from Comic-Con, but there was that new animation, the Super 7 thing, that they've made a new animation, and I think you did some new voice acting. What was it like when you found out that you were going to be, it's just, when I talk about Super 7, I basically talk about the figurine company that's making the new He-Man toys and the vintage ones. And then I think they hired you to do some new voice acting for Skeletor as well as Merman and Man-at-Arms. What was it like doing that?
Well, I'm not sure I understand what the project was. Super Friends?
Was
No,
it for,
Super 7.
were they advertisements for that line of,
Yeah, yeah.
What is that?
what is that?
The Three Towers, the Curse of the Three Terrors.
The Curse of the Three Terrors?
Yeah,
The Curse of the...
Of the Three Terrors?
yeah, it was the newest Super 7 animation.
Oh, I don't even, I'm sorry, I don't remember that. Did I do that?
Your character, yeah.
I did that, huh?
They might have just
Okay.
taken some
What?
old
Yeah,
footage.
that
That one.
Huh?
They might have taken some old footage or something.
Oh, they took old footage.
I
Probably
think so,
wasn't even
'cause the
paid for it then.
Is it him as Skeletor?
No, I don't remember
Oh,
doing
then
it.
that's gotta be old. It's gotta be the previous footage of it.
I think last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because he hasn't done anything. Yeah.
Oh, I thought that you did.
I'm sorry, I don't even
So
remember
they may have
that.
just like repurposed his
Right,
voice or
yeah.
just repurposed some
They
footage
do
for
that,
that?
they do that a lot, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it was a new footage.
Now we know.
It's packaged nicely.
I think I might have to call Super 7 now.
Yes.
There's gonna be a
Oh,
phone call.
VHS. That's before my time, friend.
Yeah, have my lawyer call him.
I'm sorry if I asked that question. I thought that you did something special for that company.
Well, I don't know. I really don't. No.
Well, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, you know, Alan, they're always threatening to do a remake of Masters of the Universe, like especially like in live action. I know there've been many attempts over the years to sort of crack this code that the animated series got so right. Like, if they were to do that again, what would you want to see from Skeletor, like on the big screen in live action? What advice would
Myself.
you give?
I heard that they were working on doing a remake of it because the first one, I understand, was pretty bad. So why not do it again and make another bad one? I don't know. Some things I don't think translate to real people, their animation and they're totally fictitious and cartoony, and now, you know, Spider-Man works, right, and all of that. But by and large, I just don't think, a lot of that does not translate to live action. And I just can't imagine He-Man. Batman did, Superman did, but they started out as comic strips, didn't they? Yeah. It's hard to define what works and what doesn't work. Got a question back there?
What was it like doing voice work for the Filmation Ghostbusters show?
Oh, anything I did for Lou Scheimer at Filmation was wonderful. We had a wonderful relationship. I loved the writing. Sometimes the actor could make a contribution, and they would say, "Oh, great, we'll rewrite using that idea." I gave you an illustration in Get Smart, where that happened, but that was a TV show. But Ghostbusters, I love doing all that stuff for Lou Scheimer. As a matter of fact, I've been working with him for a couple of years, and I saw he was wearing a ring. I said, "What is that?" He said, "Oh, it's a class ring." I said, "Where?" He said, "Carnegie Tech." I said, "Really? That's where I went, too." He said, "Really?" We were there at the same time. He was a painting and design major on the second floor. I was an acting major on the first floor, and we never knew each other until he hired me. We also found out we dated the same girl at different times. Honest to God, really. Wonder what ever came from her.
Right here.
Yeah. What kind of warm-ups did you do before you did a role, or did you warm ups at all?
What kind of warm-ups did you do?
No, I never did a warm-up at home. No. As a matter of fact, Dustin Hoffman was doing a movie where he had to be a horse, you know. And he was working with Laurence Olivier, and he screamed and screamed and screamed till he was hoarse. And Olivier said to him, "Dear boy, can't you just act it?"
That's great. I think we've got time for a couple more. Anybody's got?
I have a pretty short
Yeah.
question. How long did it take to do one entire episode? Like, how many hours did you spend?
We spent, maybe an hour or two at most. They were 15-minute episodes, weren't they? So we'd read it once, take a break, and come back and record it. So that 15-minute show in the recording, maybe it took a half hour. We were all pretty glib about our parts then. We knew what we were doing. We didn't have to search for character. We just had to kind of read ahead.
But that was Wally though, right?
No. Wally Burr in Transformers is another story. Wally Burr would give us a line reading. I'll give you an example. I loved Wally personally, but I really didn't cotton much to his direction. But let's say the line was, "Well, I'll meet you first thing in the morning," okay? So the actor would say, "I'll meet you first thing in the morning." Wally would say, no. I want you to say, "I'd meet you first thing in the morning." I said, "Okay. I'll meet you first thing in the morning." "No, I want you to say, I'd meet you first thing in the morning." Now I had to figure out, what did he really mean? So guesswork, I guess he meant, "I'll meet you first thing in the morning." So I would say, I'll meet you first thing in the morning." He said, "That's what I said, I'll meet you first thing in the morning." He didn't hear it, and he couldn't reproduce it, so you had to guess at what he really meant.
That's great. One more? Yeah.
What advice would you give to people who want to become voiceover actors?
Don't. Too many people want to do it, and there's much less work than there is now. It's very difficult. But my saying don't is not going to stop somebody who really wants to do it. So if somebody says, "Don't do that," and you think, "I want to do that," then you have to do it. That's all. That's all. It's all about, yes, it's talent. Yes, it's certainly timing and luck. But it's also pursuance. That's all. You want something, you work, find a way to get, you run into this wall, I'll bet you if you ran around that way, you'd get in, you know? You know what I'm talking about, metaphorically. You gotta find another way to do it. If you're not satisfied with no, then find a way for them to say yes.
It's great. And then on that note, I think that wraps up our panel. So thank you all.
You people have been wonderful.
Yeah. Good. Round of applause for Alan.
I want to toast you. That's my favorite comic. Foster Brooks, you got it.
I loved him.